Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where let go of ideological doctrine and ego in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. Today, I'm interviewing Jennifer Zuniga from the Mums in the Know podcast. Her podcast is dedicated to help mums tap into their intuition and make more informed decisions in these times of great change. Her podcast explores spirituality, health, parenting, education, and more, centered around open-minded and nonconformist exploration of truth and wisdom for mothers and anyone else who may be interested in her podcast. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Nick. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I did a nice little meditation for my podcast today. I just started something new called Monday Meditations. And this is the second Monday, and I'm enjoying it. I just have a 15-minute meditation for moms or anyone, a way to start the week off.
So, I imagine that it might be helpful for mums to meditate, given the stress that it involves being a mother.
Yes, it's not always easy, of course. I mean, depending on how old your kids are, or if you're homeschooling right now, or if they're, if you have the time, yeah, sure, it's always great. Of course, there are things that always seem to get in the way, whether you're a mother or not, right?
Yeah, I imagine, yeah. So, has being a parent taught you some valuable lessons?
Oh gosh, it's taught me, yes, yes, and yes, and more yeses. I mean, my kids are 19 and 20, so I mean, I can't even differentiate. I can't even think of all the lessons that I've learned between the span of 22 years. Actually, 19 and 22. My oldest is 22. So I can't remember the person that I was before becoming a mom. I mean, I can kind of, it's too vast, too vast. But one of the things I will tell you that it definitely taught me, that I'm clear on this, is it's taught me, well, now more things are coming to mind actually. Um, First of all, not to expect outcomes, to live more in the present moment. And if things don't go as I planned, or if things don't go my way, that that's okay. In fact, oftentimes it's actually better. Um, and parenting has also taught me patience. Uh, it's given me confidence, and it's really taught me to listen to my inner guidance system, and that kind of has come throughout. And but especially after the first number of years where I was looking for advice outside myself, which is always helpful to get advice, or increase your knowledge. But I realized that it's really important for me to tune into my inner guidance system,
Right.
which ultimately is connected for me to my spirituality, and connected to my purpose, why I'm here.
So, how did you? So, I guess in the process of being a parent, you gradually started tapping on your intuition because you had to, right?
Yes, definitely, because I had to. Absolutely. There were, times, for example, I'll give you a for example, where I was on an island and my son wasn't feeling well, and he was getting, I could just tell he had, I believe it was an upper respiratory infection. And I brought him to the doctor. But my son was also very shy. So he didn't want to be at the doctor's. So he was upset. And, he was young. He was maybe 2 years old, and he was, crying. He wasn't happy. And there was something going around the island, tularemia, which is an upper respiratory infection, a virus, if I remember correctly. And the doctor, when I finally, we were in the waiting room forever. And then when we met with him, he wasn't connected at all. First of all, his mind was somewhere else, probably with all the previous patients that he had seen during the day. But he, basically said, oh, basically, I was making it up. Your son's fine. And because I thought, well, maybe he had this tularemia. Oh, no. I was overreacting. And I left feeling, well, was I overreacting? And then something kicked in. No, I'm not overreacting. My son is not well. I know what he looks like when he's not well. And I had told my husband, we're getting off this island because I know Kyle, what's his name, is not well. So we left the island, and that night we ended up in the ER with my son because he couldn't breathe. So, I definitely, my instinct, instinct and intuition, that's, you can call it whatever, instinct, intuition, my gut feeling, but said, get off the island. So I listened to it, and that was very clear because my son's health was on the line. So that's a kind of an extreme example when your child's safety is on the line. That's when mother's intuition actually really kicks in, right?
When you're shaken out of your comfort zone.
Was I shaken up?
When you're shaken out the comfort zone, perhaps, is when.
Oh, yes. Yeah, sure. And also, again, just, when the life of your child is in your hands, I kind of feel like you get divine guidance. This is what you need to do. So that's an example of my mother's intuition really kicking in.
That's a powerful story. Yeah. So that seems to be an example of a common theme that I've come across in your podcast, which is empowerment versus giving your power away.
Yep. Yes. And that's definitely something that in this day and age, I think, especially young moms, just recognizing where I was when I was younger, I was really seeking for the answers and how to do things from, experts, whether it was in books or pediatricians or even, principals and teachers at school. I mean, just because I didn't know how to do it my first time around. You're kind of learning and as you go. But, we really are, as mothers, we're the most connected people to our children. So, and I've told this story before, but there was a wise woman who told me, Jennifer, the best advice I can give you is don't listen to anyone's advice. And that really hit me because I was able then to trust myself. She gave me permission to trust myself, my inner guidance system, to trust my intuition and act on it if I needed to. And once you start doing that in small ways, and, like in that example I gave you, when you start doing that, and then it starts becoming more natural,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So why do you think so many people don't listen to their intuition and don't trust themselves? Why?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, there's just so much information and we're always looking outside ourselves for answers. So whether it's in books or even podcasts or, anywhere, we're just looking, we're just absorbing information. That's one aspect. We're seekers, we're curious. As far as why don't we trust ourselves and seek inward, and one block could be fear. There's a lot of fear generated in the world. And so then, when we're in that fear state, we can't access our higher powers, our higher sensitivities, because we're stuck in that, fear state. So, and we're just reacting as opposed to really taking things in and, responding from our more authentic place. So I think just right there, those two things, I mean, those are huge, fear and then seeking outside ourselves. So that's where actually when we were talking about, when you're talking about meditation going inward, then you can start also in those times, discover your inner voice. And of course, I'm not saying anything new, but sometimes just coming from someone else, is helpful.
Oh yeah, I agree with it, but I like the way you put it.
Thank you.
So you've got a number of things that you explore in your podcast. So one of them is nutrition.
Yeah, so I have always been interested in health and wellness and nutrition. I studied in college human development and family studies, so we had to take a little nutrition there, and that was one of my favorite classes. I also, when my kids were, oh, I can't even remember, maybe 10 or so in that age range, I started studying whole health and wellness at we have in the United States. Well, this school is called the National Institute of Whole Health, where I also studied a little bit more of nutrition. I'm not a dietitian, and I'm not an expert in nutrition by any means. And nutrition, you know, is always changing in terms of what recommendations are. But it did really help me raise my kids in a way that they definitely benefited from my knowledge. So I'm definitely still interested in nutrition, although, and it's extremely important, organic, non-GMO, getting the right supplements, getting your fish supplements when a virus is going around, making sure you have enough vitamin D and zinc and, vitamin C. I mean, that's all extremely important. More important is starting with eating the right foods, cutting out sugar, getting essential oils for your brain. And I mean, there's just so much to it. One of the things I'm more interested and curious about right now is energy medicine, removing blocks, whether it's through acupuncture or just yoga or breathing, but getting our body energetically tuned because of all the, dirty energy, the EMFs, the, all that in our system. So I think that is just as important as nutrition. So it's not, yes. So my interest in nutrition is, and I'm sure always will be, but now I definitely see a bigger picture to wellness.
Right. Was it your experiences with your child being sick and not getting the help that they needed that led you towards alternative medicine?
Even before that, I've always been interested in alternative medicine. So my children, their pediatrician, who was a Western, pediatrician, also was a homeopath. And so we did homeopathy. We did a lot of, chiropractic care, and also muscle testing for food imbalances. Are you familiar with muscle testing?
I'm not sure.
So it's where a practitioner will, tell you to hold up your arm like this, and yes. So, and if something comes into your field, your energy field, and it weakens your system, when they try to push your arm down with two fingers and you resist, then your arm collapses, and then that tells you that energetic substance or that energy from whatever it is they put into your energy field, if your arm goes weak, then that weakens you. If it goes strong, your arm remains strong, then that strengthens you. So that's how it works. But so we did that. So yeah, I think I definitely like alternative healing as opposed to Western medicine, unless it's something, and of course everybody says this, if you break an arm or a leg, or you need some sort of emergency surgery, something like that. But as far as preventative care or even treating colds and viruses and certain bacterial infections, all that. There is a wealth of information, and there are people out there who can treat you and your children more naturally and holistically, which have better results, in my opinion, in certain circumstances, and fewer side effects, and actually can help strengthen your immune system and your body going forward, as to a drug that can treat symptoms, but also it can weaken your immune system going forward.
Right. A lot of people might be unsure about potential risks of given the uncertainty of something that isn't approved by experts, so and so forth.
Well, yeah, and I guess I would definitely say you need to work with, if you're concerned about that, it's definitely, you need to work with either a functional medicine doctor or a chiropractor, or, someone who is trained and experienced. And I would also follow up with saying, drugs kill a lot of people every year, and those drugs are prescribed exactly how they were, they were prescribed and taken as they were intended, and they still have killed many people. And I know that's a harsh statement. That's a big statement, but that's the fact. Drugs are recalled all the time. Even in baby powder, they found asbestos, so they had to remove that. Vioxx, I mean, they had to take that off the market. So drugs are not, which is why you need a prescription. They're not necessarily safe for everyone. And even the people who take them according to how it was prescribed have either died or, had difficulty.
Yes, I suppose it's not at all true that one is the safe approach and one is the unsafe approach.
No, just like with natural, herbs and such, or, mushrooms, you don't want to go into the forest and just think anything there is going to be safe because it's natural. You don't want to eat a mushroom unless you know what it is. So anything I'm saying is, hopefully it's just common sense that you need to, work with somebody that does know. You can't just, either following a book, or you need to pay attention to, I guess it's interesting because on one hand, you want to follow your inner guidance system, right? But on the other hand, you do need the information. So you need the information and you need to follow your inner guidance system in order to, be guided in a way that's best for you.
Right. So this is about intuition, right? Though, how can you tell if what you're feeling is intuition or your mind, or your mind, if it's your ego or your intuition?
I mean, that's a good question. I think we're always learning. And there isn't, the obvious answer would be, well, if you're working from, depending on the circumstance, if you're working from a place of, or if your body is tense and, fear-based, and then it might be your ego. But like, again, going back to the example with my son who was sick, that was just, it was a scary situation. So there was definitely fear around that. But the guidance I was receiving was very clear, and it wasn't necessarily fear-based. It was just very clear. Get your son off the island.
Clarity. Right?
Clarity. It was very clear. So, that is a good question. I mean, when you sit with something, let's say there is a decision you need to make about something, should I homeschool my child, or should I, let's just go there, homeschool my child or send him or her to school. Maybe you've collected a lot of information and you're still concerned on that. Well, I would sit with it. I would sit and I would do a little meditation, and I would invite some love and heart energy into, your body, and try to just sit from a more neutral place and see what comes to you. You might want to write it down in your journal, sleep on it, but ask the universe for some clarity or guidance. When I've done those things usually do come to me. I do receive guidance, and it could be like, for example, this sounds kind of out there, but I identify with certain numbers, and so I see certain numbers, and sometimes I'll see the number 222 or 222. And so sometimes that when I'm driving, for example, I might just ask, let's say this was my question, should I be homeschooling my son? I feel like I want to bring him home. I want to have him home and teach him from home because it feels safer right now to me, or because whatever's going on at school doesn't feel right with me. So should I homeschool him? So then I might see, on a license plate, 222 or 22, or, I might see that through my day, or I might get certain signs of maybe somebody will call me, or I'll read in a magazine about a success story about somebody homeschooling their child. I'm just trying to receive the information. So that's one way to receive the information. And then if, I'm just talking about if I don't feel a clear answer coming from my intuition, then I might be receiving it in other forms, the answer from the universe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit. I haven't really had it in the way you've talked about there. But recently I have had, there was a video which, no, not a video, an episode. There would have been a number of coincidences with the times of my episodes, like being directly on the dot of something, but unintentionally, or like, I'm not sure, I forgot the example off the top of my head, but is there anything more you can, so why, I'll get back to it when I found it, but in the meantime,
So
if
I
you were
just
to
want to
introduce
say
people to
this.
numerology, like how would you explain it to people?
So I'm not going to go into numerology because, you can look up numerology on the internet, because I'm not, I don't know enough about numerology. But I will say this, is that I believe, we're all soul beings inside this physical form that we call bodies. And our guidance is coming from a source energy that is around us, above us, wherever it is, but it's energy. And I believe it is there, that guidance for us to tap into whenever we connect with our inner energy. So, and the thing is, the challenge is it's different for everyone. Everyone is so different. We all have that source energy, and we all have the aptitude and ability to connect to this higher energy, but our own unique experience might receive things differently.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a matter, and this could be really fun. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a serious thing. How do I find my intuition? How do I find my inner guidance
That's
system?
not intuitive.
Yeah, no, but it can be really fun. It can be exploratory. We love to explore. Kids love to explore. So just have fun. Ask the universe, what about this? What about this? And, just have fun with it and explore it. And I will say this, one dead giveaway is our emotional, I used to tell my kids this, your emotions, we have them for a reason. So it's our emotional guidance system. So listen to your emotions, see what they're about, where they're coming from, and let that be the guide to where you explore your connection to the universe, that source energy.
Yeah.
And that's fun. That's really fun. And it can be playful.
I wonder, should we take care of ourselves in the same way we might take care of children?
That's an interesting question. I think we can definitely, and I know some therapies do that, look at, the child in you, the child side. But I guess the answer would be, it depends how you take care of children. But if you're if you care about children and you love children in a healthy way, then yes, definitely take care of yourself as a child. Yes, I think it's always helpful, or it can be helpful, to remember ourselves as children and love ourselves, that part of ourselves, respect ourselves. Um, yeah, yeah, that can be helpful.
So what's your parenting style?
Well, it's definitely evolved. Um, and it's definitely changed. I like structure, and you'd have to ask my kids, if this is accurate, but I believe when I was a younger mom, I definitely was more like, this is the way you do it. This is my way. I didn't say this is my way, but it's my way. This is, I like boundaries. I like structure. My mother, I didn't have a lot of boundaries growing up. So I really wanted to create boundaries for my kids. And I love, like most moms, I love my kids to death. So I definitely, when they were younger, I practiced attachment parenting. So I held, my firstborn a lot. He actually slept with my husband and I on the right side. I tried putting him in a crib. I tried they call it, Ferberizing, the Ferber method of trying to train the baby to sleep in the crib. But in the end, felt really cruel to me. And that was actually another area where I decided to, throw the books out the window and trust my intuition, because my son was happiest and content and calm when he was with me, when I was holding him. So I held him a lot. I had like a sling, and I also had the baby carrier. And
Oh,
so I had him next to me. And I did have a bassinet when he was very young, that I would put him in, and I'd put my hand on his back when I was, sleeping. But even that is, he didn't even like that. He just wanted to be right next to me. So, and I also nursed him. So every few hours. So basically I had no sleep, but I was very connected to him. And, my heart was so full of love, and I would do anything for my baby and my second born too. I had them with me all the time. So I practiced attachment parenting, and that is what worked for me. And I was fortunate. I wasn't working. And so that worked for me. And I understand that doesn't work for everybody, but I'm just telling you what I did. Um, but again, then as they got older, I definitely liked, boundaries and structure. I liked making breakfast every morning, a nice, healthy breakfast. I loved making lunches. I loved nourishing them. I had dinner, tried to do dinner every night at the same time or around the same time, especially when they were younger. As they got older with sports, it was a little bit harder. Uh, but I was also less tolerant. So I didn't know how to, I was tired. I was oftentimes exhausted as a young mom, especially with a second child coming along. You're exhausted. So sometimes my nerves, were shorter. So I'd say, stop doing that or something, I would just be more reactive. Um, and then as I got older, and maybe from reading I started to not be so attached to outcomes. And also as my kids got older, I let them guide me, sometimes push me into guidance, because they were confident, you know, they would, when they're old enough, they start telling you no, they're not going to do it that way. So then it's like, oh, that's a whole new ball game. So there's some navigating then. So my parenting style definitely changed, but I definitely started out with attachment parenting, which was a big, big deal for me and them.
yeah. Something you said struck me because I mean, you talked about how you didn't put your baby, baby in a crib. You were there with them all the time, and we can't assume that's definitely the best way to do it always. But I do wonder if abandonment issues or issues like insecurities that people develop might be sometimes linked to, being put in a crib and that's being left there,
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I've wondered the same thing. By the way, my daughter, my second child, we still had the crib in the house. And when she was little, she was like, for nap time, she wanted to go in her crib. It wasn't even her crib, it was just there. And then she, want to be in the crib, and she liked the crib. So I was like, oh, this is different.
Just like I've got my
But
own house.
yeah, it's like, and she would sleep in her crib, at least for naps, not for nighttime, but for naps. And that was great. But yeah, I've wondered the same thing. It's interesting with my son, because I practice that attachment parenting. People would say to me, oh, he's going to be a mama's boy. And, he has to learn to separate. Even like in preschool, he didn't, excuse me, in preschool, he went there a few days a week, and I sat in what I call the big comfy chair in the hall, and he would look around the corner to make sure I was there. So he just needed me. He needed my presence around him. And I just was like, all right, I'm just going to go with it. I feel it too. Like I liked that connection with him. And he was really smart and very perceptive. And for him, I think he saw more of the world than other kids. So he needed my security around, because he saw it maybe he saw more of it. So it was a little bit more scary than maybe for other kids. So, but that attachment parenting and, that love that I gave him, that all mothers give their kids, it's interesting how everybody said he was going to be this mama's boy. And now, oh my gosh, he's so independent. I mean, he's traveled different parts of the world, solo traveling. He's 22 now, and he's so independent. And he's like the opposite of a mama's boy. It's really interesting. And he's confident, and he's, sure of himself. And he has this, strength and groundedness about him. And he's not swayed by, at least not, I'm sure there's some peer entity in there, but his friend group, and I'm sure they do things I'm not happy about, or I would be like, why do you have to do that? But he wasn't pushed or swayed by peer pressure like some kids are. And if anything, kids gravitated towards him as he got older because of his confidence. He was always very capable. So it's interesting. I definitely, looking back, I'm glad I did it that way with attachment. I mean, there was just no other choice. That's just how it was going to be. If I needed any sleep, that's how it was going to be. If I got any sleep. And so it worked out. But yeah, that's interesting. My daughter, by the way, is the same way. She's pretty grounded and confident. So, and I raised her the same way. Yeah.
Well, that's informative. I mean, yeah, that's so. You mentioned homeschooling, so I imagine that education is something you're passionate about, and you want to do it in an intuitive way, right? So what insights do you have about that?
Well, so for my family, my kids, when they were younger, I didn't have them go to preschool, right off the bat, like, because I didn't have to work. One thing, is expensive. So, and I was home. So, if anything, why would I want to send them to preschool was that so I could have a little time to myself, maybe. But that wasn't necessarily, it wasn't a conscious decision that I'm going to send them to preschool because it's better for them. I kept them home. And then I thought, well, maybe for socialization reasons. So my son went just a few days a week. And then my daughter didn't go at all, except, when they were growing up, we lived in two different places. We lived out west and we lived on the East Coast. And we were skiers. So we lived in a ski community. And so my daughter did go to preschool, out west a couple days a week. But that's the other thing I was going to say. It was a unique situation for them growing up because they were in two different educational systems. We did send them to school. So that was very interesting for them. They'd have to start school on the East Coast, then they would go out west, and starting in November, December, they would go to a different school and then come back in the spring, right after April vacation, and re-enter the schools and finish them on the East Coast. So that was really interesting. And their friend groups, they had the same friend groups when they went back and forth. Well, it did change over the years, but anyway, people knew, in the West, they're back, and people knew in the East, they're back. But as far as education right now, it's just so different with the pandemic and everything. And I know moms and families are, confronted if they can, should we homeschool, should we not? And, that's something I would definitely have taken a look at in these times, is homeschooling. And in fact, if I were to do it again, well, I remember thinking about it at the time. I was really drawn to homeschooling, but I also, wanted my kids to be with other kids. And I also wanted time for myself. And I thought it was good to have that. So I don't know if I would do things differently. I'm glad I don't have young ones right now, because then I'd have to think about it all over again. And I'd have to think about it. That's a hard decision.
So there's a lot of things going on in the world now. Actually, let's touch on spirituality. So first of all, how did you discover your spirituality?
So, my mother was a Unitarian minister. So growing up, she was actually studying to be a minister. So I was around, that group of people who are all, I would say, pretty spiritual people. And I grew up in different congregations, church congregations. I didn't, I actually, helped out more with the Sunday school. And I didn't, I called myself, I'm a Unitarian, but I really didn't, well, I knew what it meant, but it didn't really, I didn't think about it, so as an adult, I didn't take my kids to church. And that is one thing I would reconsider. I didn't teach them about, religion and spirituality, partly because, I didn't know where I stood. I saw there's a lot of conflict in the world based on, people's religions. So I didn't want to be limited to one religion. So I didn't, I just didn't, and we were busy as a family. My kids did sports and we were busy. So I didn't, but that is one regret, actually. I wish, and I guess I still can teach, but now they're at an age where they can go out and learn on their own. But for me personally, my spirituality started to develop somewhere, I can't even remember, but somewhere in there where I just, I guess I just grew up. I've just always been connected to that inner space that I didn't used to think that was spiritual, so I didn't call it spiritual, but that inner voice, when you're young and you're playing and you're in the woods and you're, pretending, and that's spiritual, right?
I suppose it is, yeah.
So creativity, I was creative, I was doing all that, but I didn't call it spirituality. When I was older, I started doing the Course in Miracles, and which is a spiritual, a spiritually based practice. So I still, practice and do lessons. Most mornings I'll do lessons from the Course in Miracles. And that does, that I would say is a spiritual practice.
So what can you tell us about the Course in Miracles then?
You know, yeah, it's a guide. There's three parts to the Course in Miracles. There's the main part of the book, and then there's the workbook, which are daily lessons, and then there's the teacher's guide. So it's a practice that helps you well, so I'm not a great person to explain it, because I don't want to, turn people off from the Course in Miracles who might be turned off, because so the people that wrote it, it was channeled through to this woman who was a psychology professor at, I believe it was Cornell University.
Right.
And she started hearing a voice in her head, and she, being a psychologist, she was concerned, didn't know what to do. I don't know, but she ended up talking to a colleague, another professor at the university, about it. And he said, well, why don't I write down what the voice says to you?
Right.
So that's what happened. And it ended up being this whole book. Now, the voice she heard was Jesus. So it's the voice of Jesus who wrote this book that she transcribed. She herself wasn't a religious person, but she wrote down the book, the words that Jesus spoke to her. So why I hesitate about saying that is because, when people hear, oh, Jesus, like I would have done way back when, oh, Jesus, oh, it's a religious thing. But it's actually not a religious thing. It's a spiritual thing.
Right.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe the name Jesus for some people, I can't see how now that I know what I knew, but for some people that might seem scary, or something that they might not want to, because it's a formal religion, or maybe they grew up Jewish, or maybe they grew up, Muslim, or maybe,
Especially if people come from, it's not a new atheist, for example, they might, some of these people grew up with a very fundamentalist religion and then got put off it. And then the spirituality of any kind might be the turn off to them.
Yes. Yeah. So for me, though, what it's helped teach me is understand that the things that we can touch and see, the things in this world are a form, right? They're a form. And then there are things in the world that you can't see, not even in the world, but then there's the spiritual self. There's the form side of us and the spiritual side of us. And when we connect to the spiritual side of us, that's where I'm talking about earlier, and listening for guidance. That's where the joy and the happiness and, all the wonderful things can be experienced that we can bring into this world of form. But for me, it separated them, if you will. And there's a certain order to the exercises in the workbook that help you see yourself not as a body, but as a spiritual being. And there's a lot more to it than that. But that's, the direction that it will take you in.
So you mentioned Unitarianism, or the Unitarian Church, and I've heard about it before, and it certainly has unity in it, right? So what is distinctive about it?
Well, so Unitarians the church welcomes people of all faiths to their church. So they don't say your way is right or wrong. They welcome all faiths to their church. And it's more about, like, when I was young, I would say this, people, oh, you don't know how many parents ask me, especially parents, who are Catholic, or, of some, they were churchgoers. They were like, well, what is Unitarian? And as a kid, I mean, frankly, to this day, I'm like, well, what is Unitarianism? Well, so I would say, well, we believe in morality. We believe in right, and, being good to thy neighbor. We believe in helping others. We believe in accepting all people. And, actually, that is what spirituality, where spirituality should lie, in accepting all people, all religions, because it's the spiritual part of us that connects us all to one another, that we don't need to put labels on. So Unitarian welcomes all people, and they practice spirituality from that space of non-judgment and, helping others.
Is it in practice like that, or is there some judgment going on?
Well, my experience, well, it's an interesting question. It's hard for people to let go of judgments. So, but my experience is people who are really taking it seriously, that is the goal, to not judge others, to welcome, to love, to hold, to cherish, to all that, to everyone, and especially those in needs. Unitarians seem to be called to help others around the world, or in their communities, or it's more of a, you're not just sitting in the, in Sunday, it doesn't stop on Sunday, after the service is over. Throughout the week, they're like, they'll have different things going on, whether it's, working or donating to the food pantry, or working on peace in another part of the world, or, Unitarians are proactive.
Right. Well, sounds pretty positive. And does it, if it's that accessible, I suppose maybe it's another way for people. I have this feeling, I don't know if it's true, but I wonder if maybe Unitarianism is a way for people who wouldn't be interested in spirituality, in religion otherwise, to find their spiritual side.
Yeah, actually, I think that's would be good. It's interesting because one of the reasons, because I thought about going to the Unitarian Church in my town here, and I still might. But one of the things that I found while I was developing my spiritual side was that I wanted more spirituality than the Unitarian church, let's say, could give me. Because
gateway drug, right?
What?
The gateway drug, right?
Yeah, well, I wanted more church. More spirituality. So whereas the Unitarian felt like more, more volunteering, more, in a way, philosophical, more like I wanted to actually be doing the inner spiritual work.
So what then?
Well, then I didn't go. I think I went to the church a couple of times, and it was nice, and the service was nice, but it was great. But I realized I could do this work at home, and that was around the time where then I found the Course in Miracles.
Right.
I actually started to do the work at home with myself, and that really worked for me.
Did a higher part of you direct you to it on some level? Course in Miracles.
Probably. I don't remember an actual. I can't even remember how I discovered it. I think it somehow came up, or I saw it somewhere. I asked someone about it. I'm not sure, but actually, then when I did find it, I picked up the first lesson, and I actually was like, "What the heck is this?" I'm going to read you the first lesson. I have it right here, and I didn't relate to it at all. At all. In fact, I thought this is really stupid. I really resisted it. It was interesting how I resisted it. My kids, they were younger. So the first lesson, where is it? I have it right here. It's the workbook for students. And lesson 1, well, it gives a whole introduction.
I definitely want to actually take a look at this because I've actually put it off, even though I know the Course in Miracles is pretty good. So
Yeah, so this is the first lesson. Now, of course, there's the whole introduction, all that, but just I'm showing you what I resisted. It says, nothing I see in this room, and then in parentheses, on this street, from this window, in this place, basically where you are, nothing I see in this room means anything at all. And then it directs you, and I won't read the whole thing because it's, a full page, but it tells you to look around you and look farther around you and be specific with the certain items. This table does not mean anything. This chair doesn't mean anything. This foot doesn't mean anything. The lamp, that's, you get the feeling. Nothing in this room means anything. At the time when I first read that, I'm like, that's absurd. Of course these things mean something. Of course my hand means something. Of course, the door means something. In fact, it made me angry that this book was telling me. Right. If nothing means anything, then what the heck are we doing here? What's going on? I mean, I was like, I really resisted that. But so I didn't pick it up for a little while after that because frankly, it kind of pissed me off. But then, I'm like, all right. So, and there is the book before the workbook. And so I read some of that. But anyway, I did go back to the lesson, and it's interesting. Now, when I read it, nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, means anything. Now I have a completely different reaction. What a relief. What a relief. Nothing means anything. All the, anything, all the weight I put on anything, that glass, whatever, it doesn't mean anything. How wonderful, because now I have the feeling in my heart, right, what does mean something, what means everything is my spiritual being.
And your playful side.
My curiosity, my playfulness, joy, love. That's
kids
it.
Are actually more connected, right? I wonder sometimes, do we lower our frequency as we grow up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's kind of like what really is, it's about finding a way back to that, but in a different way.
Yeah. And it's sad how we as, parents, and myself as a mother, I mean, I can't remember saying this specifically, but I can imagine myself saying it, well, honey, you don't want to wear that to school. You want to wear this, or, do you think you should do that? What do you think your friends would think? Or, I can't picture a certain, or, that kind of thing where we're telling our children to rethink their decisions, because we want to protect them. We don't want people to laugh at them. We don't want, and it will reflect on us, oh, if they wear that, what are they going to think about
social
me as
status,
a mom?
right?
Right. And, all that. So we as parents, we do that. And it's interesting. I love when I go out and I see, a little girl who clearly said, or a little boy, I'm wearing this, whether it's their fairy outfit or their non-matching shoes or whatever it is. And the parent, the mother is with them, and, no big deal. And it's like, oh, that's so beautiful.
I feel that there's a difference between, like, say, on one hand, a boy asking if you could wear a fairy outfit. I mean, and on the other hand, the parent deciding that they could all wear a fairy outfit. And I feel like, I don't want to generalize too much, but there's this attitude it's understandable attitude among conservatives that I've come across, which is that there's basically the way they see it is that there's a woke agenda or a politically correct agenda, or whatever you call it, that is kind of almost detrimental for the well-being of children. However, I feel like there isn't, it's unfortunate how much of a divide. I think it's because it's so polarized that the a sensible, more balanced middle ground that actually, like what you were expressing, is missed because of, I don't know how I guess I went a bit of a tangent there, but
So I if everyone, connected, going back to the Course in Miracles, if everyone connected, let go of the fear, let go of the meaning and all the objects and all the things that we see, and connected to the love within them, really connected, then, we wouldn't concern ourselves with what somebody else's kid is wearing, what our kid is wearing, these trivial little things. We would love them. We would love them.
thank you. That was what I was looking for, but I wasn't sure how to put it. Because I guess it comes down to the open heart, right? If you open your heart, if you get past fear, if you let go of your fear and other emotions that sprout out from fear, then what you get instead is you start to empathize with people from different perspectives and understand where they're coming from, and then you no longer feel like there's a big threat, and you have greater clarity. And so these nuances start to become clear, right? Whereas before it's clouded by fear, anger, hatred, etc.
So, and it also helps, you love yourself, right?
Right, yeah.
And then you turn it back on yourself and you love yourself. One of the things that the Course in Miracles talks a lot about is using forgiveness as a tool to really connect to that love. And it's, we hold on to this energy sometimes for decades. We hold grudges, we hold,
I know that feeling.
anger, and even we hold with ourselves, judgment about ourselves or guilt. We have, like, I still work on that, with if as a parent, oh, why didn't I do this, or I should have done this, or we have guilt. So gosh, when we can forgive ourselves, forgive others, forgive, whatever it is, a situation, then it just relieves. It can lift a weight off our shoulders, out of our bodies. One of the ways that I just dawned on me that I have done this before is, when I am holding something, anger or resentment or any of that kind of energy, that icky energy. And, then I do my own little, close my eyes in meditation or contemplation. Sometimes I'll even open my eyes and look out the window at my backyard and watch the birds or whatever. But, and I'll consciously take that energy, that situation, that guilt, and give it to the universe. And I'll put it, I picture even an altar, and I put it on the altar. I give you, and I ask for forgiveness. I just ask for, please forgive me for this, or I forgive that person. And it's not about, it's interesting though, because you can't, this is where I get, I'm speaking honestly here. This is where I get kind of tripped up, because it really is coming from the mentality of, when you forgive something, it's not, you're not forgiving it. You're not condoning any action that another person has done or that you've done. The forgiveness comes from acknowledging that we are higher beings in a spiritual realm, and that entity, that person, that whatever, that physical form This is going back to that first lesson. Doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning in that. The truth in the universe is that what is within that person, the spiritual energy, the love, that is the truth. That's the truth, and that's my truth. So that world of form and that entity, it's not the truth, and it's not eternal.
It's not truly them. It's a
Well,
distortion that comes from what they picked up in their life, potentially, right? Or not necessarily, but it's a distortion. I had an
what it
idea. Sorry.
what I was going to say is it's a finite. That distortion is finite. This is the difference between truth and, really also what the Course says is talks about illusions. So, our true soul, our true selves, our higher selves, we live for eternity, and that love, because that's why you can't contain love. It's always expanding. The things in this world and the form world, the bodies that people hold around them, that's finite. That will come to an end. But what doesn't come to an end is the love and the spiritual energy of that body, of that, you know what I'm saying, of the animal or whatever. So that spiritual part is infinite. And so when it says it's meaningless, and this is where you can come to the forgiveness, is that part of the finite world. You realize how small that is, and then you can see the infinite in that person or in yourself, the love, the higher self. And if you want to connect to that, then you have to let go. Then you have to let go and forgive, because you realize, well, what you were saying is whatever that person created or made you feel isn't even real.
There's another thing as well, and that there's the mirror effect. So if everyone's got in their mortal body and mind got an illusionary body, I suppose, where there's the mirror effect that that occurs on this level of things in reality, in this level of reality. And so what I realized recently is that so if you're receiving judgment, then you're judging yourself, and it's just a reflection of the judgment that you already have. And if someone else is receiving your judgment, then perhaps you're reflecting their judgment of themselves. Or if they haven't forgiven themselves for this, that, or the other, that's will be reflected in other people not forgiving them for this, that, and the other. And I feel like it's not just that we can apply it to ourselves, but we can understand that other people are hurting. Other people that we might dislike or might fear or whatever, or feel like a big threat. Like, for example, you might not be too chuffed about Bill Gates, given what's been happening in the world. Also, there's another people who have agendas. But what I realized is they must have a lot of self-hatred if they are so hated, because otherwise, why would they be hated? And so, well, can you apply your principle to people you are very concerned about?
So this is what I would say with that. And it just was occurring to me that I left a piece out. So it's interesting because I learned by teaching, right? So I haven't really had this kind of conversation with the Course. Like I just kind of experience it. I'm not an expert in it, but now I'm okay. So this is where it was getting at as far as forgiveness, is that when I let go with forgiveness from, let's say, you mentioned Bill Gates and what he's doing in the world, if I think he's a evil man, first of all, okay, there's two different things I want to say, is that I can either stay entangled with his energy or I can release it. And when I release it, that's what forgiveness helps me do. Forgiveness helps me release ties to those energetic, not systems, but those energetic lines, if you will, with people who I feel, have negative exchange with, negative energy exchange between us. So when I choose forgiveness, it's releasing the bondage. It's releasing me so that I can, my energy can rise to a higher vibration of love and connection. It's not saying that they're not evil. It's not saying that they're wonderful. It's not saying that anything they did is right or wrong. It's that I don't want to be held by that. I don't want to be held by the energy. Gosh, let me let that go. I ask for forgiveness. I forgive you. I rise up, to that higher vibration. And that doesn't mean I can still rise up to that higher vibration. And by the way, and then back in my body self, I might have a clearer, and be able to do things about the wrongs in this world, whether it's things that Bill Gates is creating or not. I can come down here and I can actually be more effective because I'm coming from a place of love. And then I can use that energy and take action where I need to take action, whether it's, get involved and write my politician, or whether it's, start planting my own food, whatever it is, whether, okay, if I'm mad at, because let's say somebody, something to do with my kids, maybe there was something at school, some bullying or whatever it is, when I use that tool authentically with forgiveness and release those negative attachments and welcome and shoot for that higher energetic vibration of love, then I can come and explore the problem at hand in this physical world from a more loving and effective way to create the change that might be better for all,
Yeah, that makes sense, especially how the way I look at it is that if we raise our frequency, if we do that, if we imagine if you're trying to get a vantage point, you get higher up, you see further, you see the lay of the land, and you have a greater clarity about how to move forward. And raising your frequency is like that. So if we might be very entangled with a problem or an issue and be like, okay, what we need to do right now, but you'll be in a better position to know what to do if you can raise your frequency. And you seem to have come to a very similar answer with that. And I was wondering about, so if we tap into intuition and our spiritual sides, how can we apply those lessons to dealing with the issues that we face at this time, such as the Great Reset, transhumanism, AI, censorship, vaccines, COVID, indoctrination?
Yeah, that's really interesting because on one hand, like right now I'm hearing, okay, well, there's a choice between fear and love. So we always have a choice in our thought process, in our actions, and are we going to choose fear or love? So it's interesting with everything that's going on in the world. It's such a great place to learn, right? We're not just here to live in this world. I believe we're here to raise our consciousness to a higher vibration.
This is school in a way.
This is school in a way, right? And we've created this world that's full of, a lot of conflict, a lot of challenge. And first of all, I think it's a really exciting time to be alive, especially as so many people are kind of awakening around the world, and they realize, you could have other people on who would be able to tell you much more about this than me, but we can use our higher powers to create something good. We have a lot of opportunity. There are so many areas in this world where we can create goodness, where we can bring love energy. There's no shortage of that, right? So how wonderful is that?
It
How
is. I mean,
wonderful is
it's
that?
so, it can be so much better.
Well, we can actually make and shift and make changes
Ourselves,
so,
right?
right, ourselves. And by doing, like, I was just talking to someone on my show, and they were saying how our internal world, which is kind of what we're talking about here, our internal world is reflected out, and the outer world can be reflected in. So when we work on our internal world, that has an energetic effect on the whole world. But yeah, but back to, as far as, right, I mean, I've been thinking about this too, the Great Reset. And I mean, a part of me wonders, and I'm just, obviously just, I'm just thinking right now, this is not planned, but so because I have been kind of in this fear mode, because I want my kids to grow up in a world that is full of love and good health and all that. And right now, with what I've learned with, certain people's agendas and plans, and, whether it's vaccination or whether it's, GMOs in your foods or fluoride in your water, it seems like it, I mean, I have to say it does. I mean, there's a part of me that does feel like, oh my God, does somebody want to kill us? What are they trying to do? They're putting like all these pesticides and herbicides and fungicides on our foods, and glyphosate that ruins our gut. And,
what if they are?
Well, so just a minute though. So yeah, you kind of wonder, oh my gosh, is somebody trying to kill us here? I mean, fluoride in the water and all the crap, the toxicity. We're living in such a toxic food, our oceans. And yeah, so then you have to wonder, all right, that's a little overwhelming. If they, meaning, a group of people who can make decisions on a policy level, at that level, let's put fluoride in the water.
Beyond policy level, on a sort of.
Well, exactly. But I mean, as far as like fluoride in the water,
yeah.
So, right. So you wonder, where is this coming from? But I don't know. Let's just explore it, back it up a little bit. This is what I wonder. Okay. So if I'm going to believe that coming from a fear place, what am I going to do about it? Okay, I'm going to react to it. Like, I'm wondering, this is just wondering, what's my power if I do that?
Well, they're probably accounted for fear reactions anyway, so they'll probably
so even forget about the they, or that there's any conspiracy or anything like that. I'm just wondering, when I personally go there, what is that doing for me? I'm living in that place. That's what it's doing. I'm just realizing right now, I'm living in that place. I'm living in that place of fear. So, all right, well, let me look in the other direction. I wonder, with a higher understanding of things, and that higher understanding would be, kind of go back to what I was saying before, is that the higher understanding would be, oh, this is like our little splice of life here is not even a splice. It's like a speck, a slice. So the truth is, we're spiritual beings living this physical body. I believe the purpose is to transcend into something of love, transcend our vibration into a higher frequency, which is where creation really real. Okay, so that, but then so if I come from that and understand that and realize that, oh, okay, it's really exciting. Things that we see don't mean anything. Things in our world, it has no value eternally. So when I look over there to that area that I look at, then all of a sudden I look at, wow, there's so much hope. Not only is there so much hope, there is an abundance of creative energy, an abundance of it. Like we don't know one thing I do want to learn about is the powers that our ancient, civilizations were in touch with, because I didn't know about them, but I know they had them. But so when we look at things that like I'm looking left and I'm looking at the fear, and I'm looking right and I'm looking at love. Now, when we look at things that are coming from that space, the same thing could be going on in the world, and yet it's completely different. I have so many more opportunities. I am so much more powerful. I'm coming from love, and get this, I'm happier. I'm more excited. Maybe from that energy, I'll plant a garden in my backyard. Maybe I'll start eating, from my own garden. I'm just, maybe I'll start homeschooling my kids. Maybe
it's a lesson. This whole thing is a lesson at school. You have the power.
I have the power of where I want to direct I definitely have the power of perception and where I want to put my thoughts and where I want to put my attention, because I know that wherever I do that, my body will respond accordingly. I'll either be stuck in fear and worry and anxiety, or I'll be expanding from a place of loving awareness, and I'll be able to make more holistic and conscious choices. So nothing's changed except my perception. But don't you think like it's really exciting, like the work of Bruce Lipton, the power, the biology of belief, and this whole realm of like quantum physics and how we create our reality with our thoughts, and that whole world. I think that this is just so connected, and it's interesting that topic is really exploding now. And isn't it such a timely, in all throughout history, isn't it so timely that this is where we're discovering it, when basically, there's the world with all this going on, and we're coming to, it looks like, people say we're in our 6th extinction. And then I'm like, wow, isn't it so cool that the discovery of quantum physics and higher consciousness and the power of our minds and the power of our thoughts and perception and all that it's like coinciding beautifully with
synchronized.
It's synchronized with what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hope, and it can seem really overwhelming, the problems of the world. But if we just take the baby steps and, try to tap into
inner power.
Inner power, use forgiveness as our tool to let go of the bondage of that negative energy. And then with our children, act, and kind of guide them how to do the same, because children are very resilient and resourceful.
Right.
So if we can encourage them to tap into their creativity from, and we can maintain that loving home environment, and, not talk about all the craziness of going on in the world necessarily,
Right. So the first step might be to forgive other people of different beliefs, but the next step might be, when you find out about certain conspiracies, and you find out about, say, the cabal, the Illuminati, or whatever, perhaps if we forgive them, maybe if forgiveness can save the world, right?
Well, let me just say this. In order to forgive them, you have to acknowledge that that's what they are. But I'm just curious, I'm wondering about that. Maybe I don't even want to acknowledge. Maybe, no, I don't want to give them that power.
Does it give them power? Or maybe
I don't know. the thought that if my thoughts create my reality, then it is kind of giving them power. Maybe I
Does
just
that
want to picture them as little tiny dust of things in the whole vast universe, because that's what they are. They're so little, they're so small, there's so few of them. They're just, in the whole.
unconditional forgiveness, I suppose, doesn't really play favorites?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, well, what do you think? I'm wondering, like when I forgive somebody, I'm recognizing, like I'm seeing them.
It's about how you feel. So if you feel a lot of resentment towards, say, someone you think has got a certain agenda, then because of how you feel about it, it's precisely that's why you need to forgive them to release that.
I see.
It's the
Yeah,
negative
that
energy that
makes
you're
sense.
holding on is what's
Right.
keeping you down. And it's the same with everyone else. The more people let go of that density of what's holding them, anchoring them down, the more we are buoyant and rise.
Right. And then I'll say one step further, though, is when I was looking to the left and seeing the fear and looking to my right and seeing the love, to my left is that energy and that entity that you're talking about, and perhaps those people. And to my right, you know, is is that higher frequency, and I see things more energetically positive. Well, if I were to put one of those people over in that world in the right, all of a sudden, actually, honestly, I can see their beauty. I can see their beauty. I can see how creative, how whatever, but I don't have to see them in such a dark light because they're not that powerful. Like they're only powerful when they're over in my left, in my left view, where the fear is.
I mean,
That's where they're powerful, where they're the fear. That's when the fear takes hold, and honestly, that's I know that people who want to manipulate behavior, especially on the mass level, that fear. I mean, everybody knows this. If you don't know this, then this is just how I'm telling you. This is how it is. Everybody knows that fear, can have a drastic effect, and then it can freeze you, and then you're just responding in this place of fear. You're not responding from a higher level. So, like if you watch the news, all the time, then you're stuck in this fear. And when you're stuck in this fear place, the critical thinking part of your brain is not there. So then you're very susceptible to being receptive to any ideas or any information coming into your brain. So, you're programmable.
right. So the key thing is there's various practices such as meditation and such as forgiveness. And these things liberate us from being vulnerable to that control. And that is fundamentally the way we can do it. We can come up with all these schemes and plans about how we're going to counter the conspiracies, but maybe if we have the ability to determine reality and all we need to do is stop on tripping ourselves over, then yeah, I mean that's the answer, really.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's in our perception. If we're not going to buy into the fear, if we're not going to join that camp, then it loses it. Then the fear, then we're not as, responsive, reactive, I should say.
Yeah.
When we stay in that more positive, energetic vibration of love and forgiveness and joy and happiness and curiosity and exploration and fun, isn't that a much better place to be? Who doesn't want to be there? When we stay in that place and we're conscious of it and we bring into our lives things that feed us in that way, and we let go of the things in our lives that, that try to taint it, then we're going to be making much more conscious choices that will benefit us.
Yeah, the benefits at all benefits all of us, really.
But I do have to say, so there is, then people say, well, then you live in La La Land. And then you live in La La Land. And meanwhile, you know, they're putting fluoride in your water and it's ruining your pineal gland and whatever, you know, then, so yes. Okay. So when you're there and you do need to make actual choices, then at least the choices you're making will be from there. And then,
Not
okay,
from fear.
right, maybe I'm going to filter my water. Maybe I'm going to talk to the guy at the water or
Right.
somebody in my town to start to, which has happened in my town. They don't put
You'll know
fluoride
what
in
to
it.
do, and you'll do it, and you won't be panicking, wasting time.
Right.
Right. And on that note, I feel like this is a good point to end it, really, because that's not the final answer or the final lesson, but certainly that's a good step in the right direction when it comes to
Yeah.
dealing with these things.
Yeah. And may I just offer your audience, your listeners, you know, because of everything going on in the world, one thing that I haven't been so good at is having fun, is allowing myself to have fun, you know. So whether it's go out for a walk and do a little skipping or whether it's
Yeah.
turning on some good music that you used to just love and start, you know, and dancing, or whether it's, you know, really being present and enjoying the time with your children or your family, playing a game, doing a puzzle, you know, I would say just go and do that, you know, really make the time for it, try to not you know, spend all the time, you know, in that fear place. Make that really conscious decision to have some fun in your life. That's what we're supposed to be here for. We're supposed to be happy and having fun and connecting to others and spreading that, being joyful.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. And thanks for coming. So bye for now.
Yes. Thank you, Nick.